I'd like to speak of how others have taught me humility. To this end, I'd like to use the example that my parents taught me, that my community has taught me, and also that my work has taught me over the years. If you consider definitions of humility, you can follow a religious definition, which I believe teaches that God's interests should be first, others next, and then yours last. Perhaps a more common definition, at least according to the dictionary, would be that of a modest or low view of one's own sense of importance. In searching out numerous definitions, the one that appealed to me perhaps most was given by C.S. Lewis, one of my favorite authors. He stated that humility is not thinking less of yourself, it is thinking of yourself less. I was raised in a fairly typical middle-class family in the 1970s and 1980s. And looking back, I appreciate more and more how my parents put their children ahead of themselves in raising us. I had two brothers and a sister, and I can think of many, many examples of how they made sacrifices in our best interests. Now my father passed away several years ago. My mother now finally has the opportunity to pursue her own interests perhaps more. My father, who passed away several years ago, he had been diagnosed with cancer unexpectedly and wasn't given very long to live, but I will always remember how he faced the end with such a great sense of humility, which really was the way that he lived his life. There was no great spectacle, there was no great ceremony, there was just him wanting to make sure that his wife and his children would be looked after and would live on with his memory. I consider that my father's own ultimate act of humility. I'm very fortunate to have lived in this community of Wolfville now for 25 years. And certainly those of you who have lived here for any length of time have come to appreciate the many, many individuals in this community who put others' interests ahead of themselves. Every day I meet more and more individuals of this nature. We are a great community of volunteers. Many of us volunteer for numerous causes, and many examples would include certainly the various service clubs that we have in our community. Having worked on campus now for over 20 years, one of the things that I've come to appreciate more is how much our students here at Acadia University give to our community. I'm very privileged to work with students through my own work as a physiotherapist, particularly students in the kinesiology program. And obviously I serve our student athletes as well as other students, faculty and staff members, and people from the general public. Many, many students give many hours to serve our community in many ways, putting others' interests ahead of their own. And then finally, perhaps one of the best examples of just dedication to our community would be the L'Arche community in our town, and how the members of that community and their support workers work together to provide a happy and fulfilling life for less privileged individuals. Over the 30 years of my career, it's become increasingly known to me through my day-to-day work how many individuals have demonstrated a great sense of humility in serving others. I can certainly think of many student athletes who led our teams on the field and demonstrated great leadership qualities. But there have been individuals who, in a much quieter and more graceful and humble way, led off the field. And I can think of one particular individual not many years ago whose career here was riddled with injuries, and this individual always managed to rise above those. Unfortunately, during the course of his career, his health gradually deteriorated, and you never would have known it, but he continued to lead by example his teammates and never asked anything of himself. Unfortunately, not long after he graduated from Acadia, he did pass on, but his memory lives on in many of us who knew him and the way that he led his life in humble service to many others. Perhaps the greatest example of humility is taught to me by the many common folk who it's been my great privilege to have worked with over the years. Many individuals who make many sacrifices for other people. One group in particular, which seems to be becoming more prominent in this day and age, is the plight of some of our seniors, especially with dementia becoming much more common in our general population. And as some of you may know, one of the more common, or certainly one of the emerging ways in which individuals with dementia can be helped is through exercise. So we're now being asked more to help individuals in the early stages of dementia with exercise programs. And these individuals, of course, come in to see us with various family members and friends, and it always amazes me how family and friends will dedicate their lives to help these individuals. And obviously this is a life-changing situation for these individuals. But just the selfless act of dedication and devotion, sacrificing their own interests and their own lives to help those of others, to me has been one of the most impressive acts of humility that I've ever witnessed. I hope through these examples that I've given you a better sense of what humility means, and that you can carry forth with that in your own day-to-day lives. I'd like to finish with a prayer for humility that was written by William Barker. Father, give us the humility which realizes its ignorance, admits its mistakes, recognizes its need, welcomes advice, accepts rebuke. Help us always to praise rather than criticize, to sympathize rather than to discourage, to build rather than destroy, and to think of people at their best rather than their worst. This we ask for thy name's sake.